Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and welcome to the review of the Acolyte Season 1, Episode 7, entitled Choice. And it is currently on Disney Plus for all of your viewing enjoyment. How are we doing out there, everybody? All you Star Wars fans who haven't yet abandoned this show. I know a lot of Star Wars fans have checked out, and rightfully so. I can understand why. I'm just, I'm the type of person, once I started, especially when it comes to TV shows, and I'm 4 or 5 episodes in, I'm like, well, I might as well see it through. It needs to be complete hot garbage before I'd say I could care less. And I've done a couple of shows like that where I've yet to see the season finales and all this here because I just couldn't take it no more. But I was interested to see how this show is going to wrap up. At least this season of The Acolyte is going to answer some unanswered questions that were still on the table. And we have went 6 episodes without getting one. Well, we got one. We found out who the master was 2 episodes ago. It feels like forever ago, but we finally got that answer. But all that did was raise up more questions. And so it's like, man, is this ever going to stop? But one of the biggest questions kind of stemmed from episode 3, I believe, when we had the flashback episode back on Brendock, where we got the quote-unquote origin story of Osha and May and this witch coven who are force sensitive, or whatever they call it. I think the thread, but it's all the same thing. But the Jedi coming into play, being on the planet, and next thing you know, there's a fire. Next thing you know, all the witches are dead. Next thing you know, Osha and May are there with Saul. Next thing you know, Saul only saves Osha, and that's how the episode ends. So you're like, okay, that's an interesting episode, and it was one of the better episodes of this season. I really enjoyed that 3rd episode, and it went downhill from there for me. I just did not enjoy 4, 5, and 6, almost to the degree where I checked out. Almost to the degree I was in that same space that I was talking about a minute or so ago. But I said, no, it's got to be something there. It's got to be something there that can encourage me to continue to watch this show. And week after week, I was getting disappointed. And this was the final shot, to be honest with you. I know we have one more episode remaining after this one, which comes out next week, the season finale. But if this one wouldn't have landed for me, I could care less about that, about that season finale. But I can say I enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed it so much, I'm willing to say this was the best episode of the season, along with 3. Now, the reason it's up there with 3 is because it's the same episode. It's just from a different perspective. We're back on Brendock, and we're getting the story from the Jedi perspective, as opposed of the witches and Osha and May that we got in the 3rd episode. And so we got it from both sides of the fence, so to speak. Now, both episodes are directed by the same individual, Koji Nada. I hope I'm saying his name right. And you could tell that they both were filmed at the same time by the same director and whatnot. But this, these 2 episodes, you put them together, this is great television. I love these 2 episodes. I loved this episode, and it gave me a little hope, but at the same time, it wasn't enough to save this show. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough to save it. This show, well, I'll save it to the end of the review. Let's get into this episode. Well, I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say, but let's dive into this episode, Choice, episode 7, and we go back 16 years earlier to Brendock, and we get a question answered. Why were the Jedi on Brendock? Were they there to survey this coven, or stake out this coven, or whatever the case may be? That what was on my mind for the past month. Like, why were they even there in the first place? Well, we get that question answered. The Jedi are searching for a virgins, which brings life. The a power within the Force, because the planet of Brendock was considered a dead planet hundreds of years ago. But they get there, and there's plants, there's grass, there's trees, there's life there. And so the Jedi are trying to research and find out, what's going on there. What's the cause of this? But they get more than what they're asking for. When we get to the scene where from episode 3, where we see Osha and May as children. They're playing, and well, not playing, but I guess having a tit for tat, using the Force in this forest, which they weren't allowed to go in, but they were there anyway. And in episode 3, we just saw Saul hiding behind a tree, stalking him like he's a pervert or something. They left it so vague. They left it so vague. But when we get here to episode 7, we find out why. He just happened upon him while he was surveying the area and whatnot, and is in shock to find human beings or life forms on this planet, because not all of them are human. We find, at least these witches. And so he follows them back to camp, and gets back to the group of the Jedi that we know, and try to convince the group to go save these girls. He found a connection with one of the girls, Osha, of course. And so they go and meet up. We saw all that in episode 3, and they do the testing. We saw that in the previous episode as well, and to test their blood and whatnot. And we come to find out, at least the Jedi do, we found out earlier, that they were created. They didn't have the conventional way of making babies, not even a stalk. It was it was through this the Force, through the what they call it, midi-chlorians, the same thing that brought Anakin Skywalker into this world, or into this galaxy. And so it was weird for them. This is their first time seeing this, because they had the same everything. I mean, blood, metachlorian count, all that. Everything was the same, because they made the point to say even twins have subtle differences. Your average twins, they have differences. These don't. They're basically this one person split into two. A true yin and yang. They're like the saying, like they always say, we were born as two, or we are one but born as two. However they repeat it, but that's their mission statement, I guess, and that's basically what they are. They're one. You can't have one without the other. Good versus evil, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was interesting. The testing, all the testing, the question marks of, and I'm gonna speed through it because, like I said, we went through most of this in episode 3. So one of the differences, or I shouldn't say differences, but the actual truth of what took place, we find out that Torben, who was the Padawan of Carrie-Ann Moss, Jedi character, he was a little idiot, and we know that with him, he's the one that took the poison willingly and died in episode 2. And he was willing to do this because he felt bad. And now I will say this, after watching this episode, I still don't see what he did. Well, I mean, why he had to do that. I know there's some guilt there, but guilt to the degree that he felt he deserved to die for what he did was kind of confusing. I'm gonna be honest with you. Maybe I need to watch the episode again to see exactly what did the Jedi do wrong here, because once again, a lot of question marks were raised about the Jedi and what part they played in the destruction of this planet and of this coven, and the lies being told. We know there was some mistruths there, but at the end of the day, not really. The Jedi didn't do anything wrong. Yes, they did cover up at the end. There was a cover up of sorts, but they did tell the truth. They just didn't tell all the truth, to the council. And so there's that. But as far as feeling all that guilt to the point where he felt he deserved to die, I was kind of let down by that, because I didn't see what the Jedi did to warrant that decision by him. But that's just me. I could be wrong. Once I think on it a little bit more, maybe I would change. But as it stands right now, I just don't feel that. We were hoping, and we being me, was hoping that when this episode was announced, that we get Cal Naka, the Wookiee Jedi, that we would see some Wookiee Jedi action. And when he died unceremoniously in, what was it, the 5th episode, I believe, I was hot. I'm not going to tell you a word of lie. I was so mad, I almost checked out the show then. I'm like, why would we introduce a Wookiee Jedi and just kill him off screen like that? It's stupid. I want to see him do something. He didn't do nothing. Well, just be patient, Reed. That's basically what what the showrunner said. We've got some Wookiee Jedi action in this episode, even though he was possessed by this witch coven, taking on Soul and Tarabin. And so we saw the results of that, how he got those scars on his face when we saw him older, 16 years later. Now we see how that happened. And that was with the fight with Kalnaka. And that was a good fight, real good Jedi battle. The other thing that kind of gave me pause here, right before that fight, we witnessed Saul murder. And I say murder, I use murder a little loose, but he did murder. It is what it is. He murders the mother, and she was about to go into this, I don't know what mode she was about to go into, but she was about to possess something, probably Talbin, but Saul ignited his lightsaber and impaled her. And it was like, okay. I get it. It looked like she was about to go into beast mode. But then she says, oh, Osha was going to go with you. I was going to let her go with you. She chose you. And I'm like, okay, then why this? Why this? Why did you go? Why did you was about to turn into this killing machine all of a sudden? If you were just going to let her go. It made no sense. I didn't, that just didn't compute right with me. But it is what it is. And so, after all that, Carrie Ann Moss comes in. She manages to do a force exorcism on Kanaka and get that force demon out of him, I guess. I don't know whatever the case may be. Got his mind right. She tells him to go get the children, him being Saul, to go get the children. Now, here was the scene where I'm like, man, Saul. Now, I get it. Now, the episode is called Choice. And this is the moment where we get choice. Now, the whole episode is about choices to be made. This was a really good show for the most part. Like I said, it was some subtle things in here that I was like, but I like the setup of this episode. Here was the choice. You remember in episode 3 where you have Osha on one side of this bridge that has a gap in it from all the destruction, and you have May on the other side of the bridge, other piece of the bridge, or half of the bridge. And all of a sudden, both of those bridges started to break and they were going to fall to their death. You have Saul standing on a cliff and he force holds both sides up. And as the bridge, it's like he's struggling to keep them up. And he has to make a choice. And he chooses OSHA. And he willingly now lets go of the bridge that had me. And catches OSHA. And I was like, whoa. You know, it's just Jedi. Jedi that I grew up on and watched all these years. I wouldn't have done that. You know, they wouldn't have, I don't think, at least I don't think so. You know, it just seems confusing. And the character of Saul, we have been led to believe for 7 episodes, even though there are some moments where it seems kind of sketchy. But for the most part, you believe that he is pure at heart, a true Jedi through and through. Wouldn't make this choice like that, you know, like that. It just felt weird. It felt like there could have been another way to save both of them. But I think he felt deep down that May was just, she was too far gone, you know, and I'm talking mentally, not as far as the bridge falling, but mentally, that she couldn't be saved or whatever. And so he just let her go. Now you can make that argument, and I probably wouldn't fight you on that, but it just seems weird. At the end of the day, or the end of this episode, I should say, while on the ship, you have Carrie Ann Moss, the other Jedi, Saul and Talbot and Kanaka, and OSHA, who is recovering, and they're talking. Well, OSHA was out, but the Jedi were talking, and Talbot is like, well, what are we going to tell the council? And Carrie Ann Moss is like, well, we're going to tell them the truth. You know, we're going to tell them the truth. In which their version of the truth is May started a fire and destroyed the coven. That is true. But there is major pieces missing from that story. And now you can't really call them liars, but at the same time, they weren't fully transparent in their conclusion there. So it was just kind of messed up to cover it up. So that's their crime. That's truly their crime. They weren't 100% truthful. But overall, this was a good episode. It saved the show from being complete hot garbage. I'll give it that. But it didn't save the show from ridicule. You know, it wasn't enough to be like, oh, okay, now I'm on board. Because like I said, there's still a million questions to be answered. Everything revolving around Brimdock is answered, with the exception of how did May survive, you know, that fall. But you know, everything else is pretty much answered on Brimdock. So all that is kind of cleared up. But the Kumar, his involvement in the Jedi and all that is that's still in the air. You still, what's the deal with OSHA and May? Is OSHA turning to the dark side now, and will May turn to the light now, and all that? I mean, what are they doing? It's still like, what are you doing with this show? What is the direction here? What's the end game here? And we only have one episode remaining. And one episode is not going to wrap up everything. It's impossible not to do it in an intelligent, entertaining way. Now, they can answer all the questions in episode 8, but it's not going to be fun. You know, it's not going to be organic. That's the word I'm really looking for. It won't feel organic. It's going to feel like shoehorned in. At least that's my thoughts. They could find a way to answer all the questions in one episode, wrap it up nicely. Um, but I don't see it. I honestly don't see it because it's still a lot of questions to be answered. But if I'm just basing it on this show, on this episode, episode seven was awesome. I loved episode seven. And now let me get to the point that I was going to get to earlier, when I was almost getting ahead of myself. As awesome as this episode was, it doesn't save this show. It's still a mess, and the reason it's a mess is the structure. The way this show is structured is it's a task to watch it. It feels like you are at work. I feel like I'm out of breath after I watch an episode of The Acolyte. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I've been working out at the gym for an hour watching this show. It's like, oh my God, where are we going with this? Now, I'm all for leaving questions and leaving you on cliffhangers. I love a good cliffhanger. I really do. But these aren't even good cliffhangers they leave you with. We didn't get one at all this episode, you know, and we haven't got one on it in every episode here. It's just been, that's the end of the episode. You know, like this episode, it just ended. You know, and it's like, well, where are we going? Where are we going next? Now, when I say structure, I'm not arguing the flashback episodes, you know, 3 and 7. Yeah, okay. That you needed the flashback episodes to tell the story. My problem was the way they were structured, the way they were laid out in the season. Why did we have to wait to the penultimate episode to get that question answered? Why do we have to wait to find out what happened on Brendock? Now, if that was the case, and in most shows they do this, you know, in movies too, you wait to the end to get the twist, and this is normally when you get the twist, the turn, in a movie or a TV show. But you set up that turn a month ago with this show, and in between these two episodes, you had gibberish. It felt like, you know, like filler in some instances, and you had a big reveal in the middle of these two episodes, but it was handled so bad. It was just the way this show has been structured. There's a good show here. There's even, dare I say, a great show here. This is a great idea. I love the the idea of a Jedi killer on the loose, and Jedi have to hunt him down. Sign me up. Take my money. Who wouldn't want to see that? That sounds exciting. But this has drug on and tried to throw the audience off so much. It feel like they throw themselves off. You know, just keep it simple. Sometimes simple is good. Just keep it simple. It's all right. You don't have to make things too complicated, overcomplicate things, and now you beating your head against the wall to find out how you're going to wrap this up. How are you going to do this in a way that will be entertaining and make sense? Because as on the outside looking in, I don't see that happening next week. Now, I'm excited for next week because I want to see how this happens. I want to see how they wrap this up. Now, there have been rumors that there is a season 2 on the way. I find that hard to believe. Looking at the ratings of this season, it really done dipped. That's why I'm like, are you still hanging in there? Because a lot of people have checked out, and I think going forward with a season 2 is a big mistake. Now, if the story can only be told in 2 seasons, then you have no choice but to do it, I feel, because you got to wrap this up. You got to answer these questions. You can't just leave it hanging. But yeah, that's my beef. That's my little tirade about the Acolyte. I want to like it. I want to love it. But it's, it's like they go out their way not to make me want to love it. But I did love this episode. I will give the devil its due. That's my thoughts on episode 7 of the Acolyte season 1 choice. I would love to know, what did you think of this? I think best episode of the season, my humble opinion. Or do you think this is still bad? I really want to know your true thoughts, and I want to know what led you to the decision, whether you for or against. I would love to know. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also, on all social media platforms, just search for the KB Radio Network. Don't forget to subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of the Acolyte, currently on Disney Plus. Can't wait till next week when we wrap up season 1 of the Acolyte. I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.